there's a certain process of centralization. It's almost like the way that you've got city government and then state government and then federal government. You build your way up into more and more centralized sets of rules that then override all the rules that go downstream. And in our environment, again, we have these individual access points. And at this point, we've said, unless you're an autonomous access point, I'm taking away all of your rights to make any decisions, really. Instead, we're going to function through a couple of wireless LAN controllers. And those wireless LAN controllers that we've established those CAPWAP tunnels with, they can make those centralized decisions to allow mobile clients to access the network or not. But instead of making those decisions centrally, they could forward that decision-making process to a AAA service. So AAA stands for the fact that a centralized service can provide authentication, right? Validate you are who you say you are, name and password, smart card, however you're validating yourself. It can provide authorization. It can check for policies. Are you a user that's a member of a group connecting to a particular access point at the right time of day that is allowed to form this connection? Oh, and by the way, maybe we'll check and make sure that your firewall is up and running. Those are all aspects of authorization. And if any of those fail, it's just as bad as if your authentication failed. I'm not going to let you connect. And the final A is for accounting. Keeping track. Okay, so I did or did not allow Jacob to establish a connection to the access point at this date and time, and here's why, right? Here's what let them in, which policy let them in, or which policy kicked them out, depending on what happened. Again, those centralized servers, again, notice we have this idea of, well, how do we check names and passwords? Are those held right here on the AAA server? Probably not. Probably AAA is looking toward a centralized database like Active Directory or another business LDAP directory that we're using to provide services, names and passwords and logons to access resources in our network. And so the majority of the time, we would expect corporate users especially to go through this process. But remember, we also might have a guest database account that we manage locally or something of that nature as well. So the Cisco ISE, Identity Services Engine, is what provides AAA services for a Cisco network, unless you choose not to use that. It's not like you can't tell your wireless LAN controllers to connect to a Linux or a Microsoft Radius implementation. For example, Microsoft's current is called Network Policy Server. Yeah, it'll work. It'll provide Radius connections, no problem, because it's just a protocol, all right? And the protocol that we're talking about is Radius, the Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service, which uses UDP port 1812 for authentication and authorization messages, and 1813 for actually accounting referencing. So those are the key things to remember about how AAA is going to function in your network related to wireless.